Wolf and I are in the living room with heavy hearts today because of the killing of George Floyd and the racism in America. And we've been praying for the Floyd family. We've been praying for their healing, for their comfort. And we've also been praying for our brothers and sisters who have suffered at the hands of racism. And we've also been praying for unity and love. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when we love the Lord our God and we love the neighbor with ourselves, that is transformation. And we are praying for healing in our country, and we are praying for unity in not only in America but in the city. We've been praying. And, it's a tough segue, Wolf, but bring on the content for the living room today.
Exactly, brother. And you're so correct. And our prayers are out there, and we're going to continue praying for this great country. Amen. And for all the people, and especially the Floyd family, that God would give them comfort. Okay, well, the first big news today, Chaluch, how about this? Mike T is back on the South Side. He's large and in charge on the South Side. Mike Tomlin is back in the house. You got to love it, because that's the first signal of things really moving forward about this football season. And I got to tell you something, that excites me.
Yeah, I'm excited, man, because they're going to – only one team is not able to come and do mini camps and OTAs. And I think it was San Francisco. But
really?
But all the other teams are it's green now. It in Pennsylvania is green. So they're starting to.
What does green mean, baby? It means go.
It means go. Like, what? I'm excited that there's going to be a season. And yes. I'm excited that they're going to start with the workouts, and
they're going to get on with the business of getting on with the business, and that's what I think is so important. And I think today is it's a bit of a triumphal thing for Mike Tomlin to come back on the South Side and get things rolling, because everybody's itching to get going here, and it's exciting. And so for him to come back, I just think it signals, okay, we're moving forward, baby. And I love that. And so with a lot of enthusiasm. Now, the downside of what we heard this week was the fact that, Latrobe is not going to happen this year. Yeah. This would have been the 55th consecutive year, Chaluch, that the Steelers would go out to Latrobe, and we're not going to have training camp out there. How about that?
And Wolf, it was my 41st training camp.
You're an old guy. You are so old. You're like older than dirt.
I've spent too many years, too many camps up there. 13 as a player, one in Green Bay, and then as a broadcaster, from 1994.
I remember when you dragged me to camp, like, I don't know, it was like 10 years after I'd retired. I'd not gone at all.
Yeah.
You said, come on, you got to go. And remember, we're driving up. I'm like going, oh, man, it's like training camps. The demons of training camp pass. I was thinking about, I cramped up over there. I cramped up over there. I mean, it was crazy.
Well, when you got into broadcasting, you rejuvenated me. I wanted you to get in so we could have some time, so we could have some fun, and so we could lock arms together. Yeah.
What just started, gadzooks, man. Well, the fact is, there's no Latrobe this year, Chaluch. Now, one of the things that I think, one of the untold stories that nobody knows about is the fact that every year we used to vote on the most miserable man in camp.
Right.
I remember that, because there was a lot of miserable guys in camp.
Right.
Back in the days when you had two-a-days, you had conditioning after this afternoon second 2.5-hour padded practice. You had no golf carts to whisk you around. You had, God bless them, but the nuns were burning a lot of food up there, okay? Yeah. It was not a fun experience, but who do you think was the reigning most miserable man in camp?
Brian Hinkle. Wait
a minute, before Hinkle. Before Hank.
Colby.
Colby.
Yeah.
John Kolb. People don't realize this because you know what a great guy John Kolb is, how greatly loved he is, especially with his ATP Adventures of Training and, with a purpose that he has in working with people who are left behind by the insurance industry and rehab and so forth. And the fact is, with Colby, you'd see him and he would just, he was Debbie Downer.
Yeah, and Lammy was miserable. Jack Lambert.
Yes.
But Hinkle was.
He was always miserable.
Hinkle was the most miserable. My locker was right next to Hinkle's, and he said, "I'm done." Every day, "I'm done. I'm done," and he played 13 years. And he played. Every day was the end, but he played 13 years.
Just remember, he would always come down, and here's the thing about it. People got to understand. You go out for the morning practice. You're out there, it's like 9:20. You're out there for a stretch, and it's already like 80 degrees at 9 o'clock in the morning. And you're sweating, and you're out there, and you're thinking, it's not only the first padded practice, but you got a second one.
Right.
And you got to run afterwards. So you're going to die, progressively throughout the day. And this is the best you're going to feel that day is in the morning. And you'd be stretching and you're just like, oh, this is so horrible. And Hankel always had a scowl.
Do you remember when I told you when we were doing the hurdler stretch and I said, now I know what a
We set it up. Well, this is the second week, and it's before the afternoon padded practice, and we've had a brutal, 8-9 days of doubles, right? So there I'm stretching, and there's 5,000-10,000 people at St. Vincent College. The heat is bearing down on me. The sweat is pouring off because we always stretch with our helmets on and everything like that.
Yeah.
And I'm stretching, and I'm just sitting there. I said, I turned to you. You're in the line next to me. I says, Chaluch. Well, I didn't call you Chaluch back then, but I says, Tunch, I need something. Give me something. Give me some encouragement because I'm ready to go into the tank. And then you said,
now I know what a piece of bacon feels like.
So that's not it. That didn't help. You didn't help me at all with that one.
Yeah.
I just wanted to retire on the spot. No, indeed. The fact of the matter is, those were tough training camps, and the most miserable man in camp. We used to vote on that. It was always fun, but it became such a dominant theme between Colby, Lambert, and then to Hinkle. There was like nobody else to vote for because they were runaway winners. Now, here's the thing about it. I got a note from a buddy, Steelers Nation. Brother Joe said, you know what? We need a little levity. He says, how about a Lambert story? Do you have a Lambert story, Chaluch, that you could share?
Well,
I told Joe, I said, you got to tune in and we'll try to deliver a Lambert story. So give me one.
In 1981, when Lambert, Brian Sipe ran out of bounds and Lambert knocked him silly. And then he fell down, and Doug Deacon came along and kicked, as Chuck Noll said in his post-game press conference, Doug Deacon kicked Jack Lambert in a spot that young men should not be kicked.
Watching Coach Noll, when we saw the film later on that from the press conference, when he said that, I couldn't help but laugh because it was obvious he was, number one, he was honked off, and he was really upset about the whole thing, but he was trying to say it in a way that was acceptable. You know what I mean? Because Coach Noll was just that kind of guy, and he was such a tremendous guy. Now, you want to talk about somebody that always stresses positivity. One of the guys that we both love and big fans of is Steve Nelson, and what Steve brings. The combining of him and Joe Hayden at the corners with Mike Hilton as a nickelback, and then all of a sudden you got Minka Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmonds. There's a lot of back end good stuff going on, and Steve Nelson is one of the guys that really epitomizes it, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Steve Nelson didn't give up a touchdown pass last season. I was reading that in an article on the Steelers website, and he didn't let up a touchdown pass, and that's like not giving up a sack.
Oh man, that would be you. You had a couple sackless seasons. All right, so not giving up a touchdown. Okay, so you're like a simpatico with Steve Nelson, right?
And Steve Nelson, he is one of those guys that knows the game. He is brilliant. He is never out of position. He studies film. I always talk to him on the practice field because I learn things from him. And he studies film intensely, and he is never out of position. He has such football awareness that Mike Tomlin would say football IQ. But he is brilliant, and I am a huge fan. I thought that was one of the greatest free agent acquisitions we got from Kansas City.
When you look at this back end of the defense, how it has really gelled, and we spend a lot of time talking about and celebrating Minkah Fitzpatrick, rightly so, by the way. But the fact is, when you've got a couple of guys such as we've acquired with Joe Hayden and Steve Nelson, let's not overlook Joe Hayden and the considerable stuff he's brought to the game. I mean, he's kind of hit the fountain of youth yet again. Coming here, watching him operate last year, then being combined with Steve Nelson. When you've got two guys like that, and part of what Steve Nelson's problem, I think he didn't go to the Pro Bowl because he doesn't get targeted that much. The guy is really one of those guys that, he had one interception. And I guess you got to have more. You got to have more opportunities. And so he was talking about, he didn't get targeted much. Well, the point is, don't be targeted too much now, Steve. Now, come on, we're doing good. We don't want. You don't want to stir up the hornet's nest here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Our secondary is solid. They are great, and I'm a big fan of Joe Hayden. That was another great acquisition a couple of years ago in free agency, and he is such a great athlete, and he's a great player.
I was on the sidelines when he got his first interception as a Pittsburgh Steeler, and I remember he ran for the sidelines, went right by his teammates. They're all giving him the way to go, Joe, and he ran right behind the bench, and his wife and his family was up in the stands, and he went right up and he put that ball up there, gave it to him right away, and it was just it was a neat thing to see Joe celebrate with his wife and family up there. I just thought it was pretty cool.
You know what? That's a great opportunity for you to be on the sidelines because you see those things that we don't see.
It's a lot of fun. That's the one thing on the sidelines. There's all that, there's the blood and snot and testosterone flying around, and you feel like youthful yet again, hanging out by the guys, and then you hear the clashing and the banging, and then you're like going, oh no, I don't want to be that close. That looks painful out there. So I would sit there. I want to go over something with you because this occurred to me the other day. You and I combined 26 years of playing in the NFL.
Right.
But we've had a lot of teammates that they were good football players, and some were great, some were Hall of Famers, some were just good football players. And I thought, it'd be kind of interesting kicking around some of the best non-talked about guys that you and I played with.
Well, I'm gonna go with Keith Willis.
All right,
Willis.
Okay, defensive. Here's the point. We'll go over kind of positions, but defensive line. Give me Keith Willis. Absolutely.
Keith Willis had 14 sacks in 1983. He had 59. He had 59 sacks in the 10 years that he was with the Steelers, and he and I went at it every day. And he made me a better player because he never loafed. He was intense. He wanted to win. I wanted to win, and so we battled. And games were easier because of Keith Willis.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Tunch. He had another double-digit 12-sack season. It was at 86, I think it was, or whatever. But the point is, do you remember when Joe Green became the defensive line coach?
Yeah.
Right? We're playing Oakland one time, and he got the flashcards. We're running plays for the defense, remember? All right? And he goes, all right, Keith Willis, it's 3rd and 4 or less. And what does Oakland like to do on 3rd and 4 or less? And I heard Skipper go, they like to trap. He goes, and what do we want to do? We want to close the trap. And how do we close the trap? We trap the trapper. Now I'm in the huddle. Keith Willis has just been given the play, and I had to turn around. I remember turning, I think it was to Brian Blankenship or somebody. I said, give me a stunt guard, because Skippy knows the trap's coming. I don't want to be the guy to have to drop it in there.
Yeah. And he closed it fast.
Oh, absolutely. Now, let me ask you this. Who would be the best offensive lineman that does not get talked about much?
Colby,
yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead. What do you say about John?
Yeah, John was, he taught me how to punch.
Right.
He was very quick with his hands, and he was very strong. Yeah, I mean, he was very strong. And, he just didn't get beat. He played in 4 Super Bowls against Harvey Martin twice, against Fred Dreyer.
Right.
I don't think he gave up a sack in the 4 Super Bowls.
You know what impressed me too was what a good athlete Colby was.
Yeah.
He was a cowboy. He was out there punching them dogies and wrestling them steers and all that sort of stuff that cowboys do. By the way, remember when on the cruise ship when he lassoed the guy?
Yeah.
Lassoed, he just let it go. But John Colby, I would say so. All right, let me give you this one. How about a wide receiver? Who would you talk about being the best that maybe doesn't get mentioned much?
I'm going to go with Yancey Thigpen.
Okay.
Yeah, because Yancey run great routes, got great hands. You got John Stallworth, you got Lynn Swine, you got Louis Lips. All those guys were great. But Yancey Thigpen does not get talked about as much, and I was a big fan of Yancey.
I didn't play with Yancey. The guy that I would pick was Jimmy Smith. If you remember Jimmy Smith,
yeah.
Jimmy went to the Birmingham Stallions after 6 years in Pittsburgh, right? And one of the years in 1980, he had 37 catches. In 81, he had 29. But when he went to Birmingham Stallions after 3 years there, he had 1 year, 85. He had 87 catches, 1,300 yards, and 20 TDs.
Right.
In 1 year in 1982, Jimmy Smith, when he was still with the Steelers, he led the league with a 22.8 yards per catch average. That's pretty good. What I remember about him, he was strong, he was big, he had great hands too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and when he was with the Birmingham Stallions, they played in Pittsburgh.
Yes.
He's told Cliff Stout and Jimmy Smith, we got to spread out because one rock will get us get all three.
Oh, because there were so many people, they're all honked off at Stout or Cliff Stout. You remember? Because he went with Raleigh Dodge, our line coach, to the Birmingham Stallions of the USFL, and when they came back to Pittsburgh, because Cliff had left after that. Tough year replacing Bradshaw. He was widely booed in Pittsburgh.
And John Mitchell was on that staff.
Was Mitch? Oh, that's right. He was.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Here, let me give you another one. Who would be the best running back that nobody talks about?
I'm going with Frankie Pollard.
Bingo. You're on, baby.
Yeah. Frankie was so.
84?
Yeah. Frankie was like. Yeah. Frankie was like a bowling ball.
Yes. 99 yards rushing, 2 TDs in 84 out in Denver when they were saying, bring on the fish. Why Pittsburgh bothering coming here? And Frankie scored the winning touchdown with just like a couple minutes to go.
Yeah.
That was Frankie Pollard. Great player, great teammate.
And that place was so loud when we got in there. And when we left, you could have heard a pin drop.
I know. How about 85? Poor Frankie comes up. We were trying to get him 1,000 yards so bad.
The Giants.
Yeah. And he finished with 991. It was like going, no.
Yeah.
But, I heard from a little birdie that he still got his 1,000-yard bonus.
Yeah, he did get it, but Mr. Rooney gave him the bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let me give you another one. How about an inside linebacker? Who's the best inside linebacker that nobody talks about?
David Little.
No question.
I'm a big fan of David Little. He was such a good guy, and he's with the Lord now. Passed years ago, but he was a great player. He was smart. He saw the game, and he always was in position to make a play. And he replaced Jack Lambert. And so, yeah.
And you remember he was the younger brother of the great Hall of Famer Larry Little.
Larry Little,
Dolphins guard. But David was tough. You know, he'd get, when you come to dig him out on a trap, he was like buried in like a tick on a hound. He'd get down and lower those pads, and he was so strong in his low back and his hammies, you know, his whole keister area. He'd give you a nice blow. He was hard to dig out on the traps. Absolutely. All right, here's another one. We talked about him earlier, but an outside linebacker that that nobody talks much about.
Hink never was out of position. You know, Hink was like Jack Ham. He played the position, never out of position, never got hooked, never got driven off the ball, and you know he was a great player.
You know, I laugh about it. I always think of Brian Hinkle as Jack Ham without the beard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was very much in that mold, very much indeed. Let me give you another one. How about a safety nobody talks about?
Well, this guy, you know, Carnell Lake was talked about a lot, but I would say Thomas Everett. Thomas Everett from that draft.
He was a hard hitter, wasn't he?
Yeah, 87 draft. Dalton Hall, you know, Ron Woodson. That was a great secondary, you know, when they came in.
Because there was one other guy that not many people talk about who played corner, and you gotta love him because there's not many guys that got a name like that begins with Belton.
Yeah, Belton.
Dalton Hall. I mean, this guy here, man, he would lay the lumber on you, and you know the thing about Dalton was. You loved his aggressiveness and his he had a dynamic personality. He was not a shrinking violet by any means.
Yeah, well, when he hit, when we played the
Houston Oilers, or was it the Cleveland Browns?
You know, Houston Oilers in the playoffs.
Okay.
And he knocked somebody out. I remember that.
I remember early in the game, and the crowd was all over him. But you know what? They didn't run any more crossing routes that day. No question about it. All right, there's one other guy that we got to go over. At least I want to throw out to you. How about a tight end? No, because you might. I don't know how you feel about. I picked Benny Cunningham.
Yeah, Benny.
You know, Benny was 6'5". He was 250, and you know, I didn't realize this, but he caught in 79, he caught 36. In 81, he caught 41. In 83, he had 35. Even then, when we didn't go to the tight end that much, when passing game wasn't that big, he still had some big numbers. Think about what he could have done in today's offenses.
Right. Yeah.
He was, you know, I mean, you played with Eric Green, so I'm not sure how he would have compared with Eric Green or Mark Bruner.
Well, Eric Green had a lot of big plays. Eric Green, had a lot of big plays. So Benny, Eric Green, you know, it's a toss-up for me.
I love Benny. Was just awesome. One of the funniest stories, though, I remember how we used to have our Saturday morning meetings, you know, and a special teams meeting down at Three Rivers, right? For walkthrough. Well, I guess Benny was a little sleepy. So, you know how guys used to lay down in front of this film screen while Chuck ran the projector? Chuck asked Benny a question. Benny didn't answer. He shuts off the projector, and all of a sudden you hear this. Somebody yelled at him, and Benny came up like he was drowning. What? It was one of the funniest moments. But Benny Cunningham would have been my pick back then.
You know, one of the things I want to say is, how come Andy Russell isn't in the Hall of Fame?
You know, you brought this up earlier when we were talking off air, and I think this is a great discussion we need to have because Donnie got in now. All right, this is Donnie's year, so now the discussion's got to be bring on Andy, huh?
You know, Andy played 7 Pro Bowls, but the first half of his Pro Bowls were before the Steelers were good, and he was going to the Pro Bowls when the Steelers were a sub-500 team, and that's tough. And so, you know, you gotta, you know, I remember that interception, that pick 6, and they broke commercial while he was running it.
You know, they might have played 2 commercials back to back and come back, and he was still running on the interception.
You know, Andy should be in the Hall of Fame. 7 Pro Bowls, 2 Super Bowls. You know, there is a Steeler anti-bias because so many guys are in the Super. There's so many guys in the Hall of Fame now.
You know, I got to ask Andy because somehow I think I remember him saying he ended up with the coin from one of the Super Bowls at the coin toss.
Right. Yeah.
I wonder if he still got. I would think you'd still have that.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. All right, I think that's a wrap, Chaluch.
That's a wrap, buddy. Thank you for joining us. God bless you, and we'll be on hopefully next week.
Yeah, after I gain another 5 pounds. See ya.